All right, so moving on to the step one. How do we create the step one? It's actually super easy and we have to work on submission API. Let's go ahead and do that. It's actually super easy. So the step one is we will go into the steps folder. So there we go. And you don't need to name them exactly same, but I think for me, it makes sense if I just number them up. So I'll just right click, create a new file. I'll call this one as 01 because this helps me to understand this is my first step in altogether, but you can actually define how the steps execute and all of that. I'll just go ahead and say this is going to be my submit, and you have to name it as step. That is also required, dot step, and then dot ts. Now, surely you can go ahead and learn more in the docs that how the Python works, all of that. But one thing you'll notice closely is everything is a .step.js or step.py or step.ts. Let's understand the whole documentation structure and then we'll write our own. The step one is to import API route configuration, and then we have handlers on it. We'll first work on the API route configuration, then I'll walk you through with the handler part as well. Get the Zord if you need it. TS store, we don't need this. We create a schema. If you wish to create schema, that's also okay, but not required for our case. This is the most important part. We have to export the configuration here, which is API route config. And that's what gave me the idea that we should have a motia config to define the steps. So name this, type this API path, method, body, and what is the flow and all these things. Or if it emits some data, we have to go through with this. So let's actually work on this much only first, and it's actually super easy. We're going to go ahead and we'll import something from motia. What are we importing? We are just getting the API route config. Once we have the API route config, we have to export this. So export const config, which is going to be of type API route config. And here it's just a big object. That's all. Now, first of all, what should be the name of this one? I'll call this one as submit channel. Sounds a decent name. And what do you need an extra for that? By the way, you'll see some of these squiggly lines that, hey, the type is missing and all of that. That's okay. I'll walk you through. No big deal there. TypeScript stuff, not going to bother us much. What's the type? This is the most important part. This is a type of API because it's API route config. After that, we need a path. This is where you define your routes just up here. I'll call this one as slash submit. And after that, what method you are having. So I'll just call this one as the method. For me, in this case, this is going to be post. Feel free to add get, put, whatever you like. Now, most important for me is the emit. Once we receive the data, what kind of event it is going to emit so that other steps can actually constantly listen for it. It's kind of a pub sub model. And you can define as many events as you like. I'll call this one as yt.submit. This is kind of their recommended way how you define or submit the events. But again, you can name your event whatever you like. No such big deal. And that's it. The first part is all done. There we go. Told you, it's super easy. Now what we are doing is let's also write some docs for us. So this is going to be my step one. What we are doing in this step is we are accept channel, channel name and email to start the workflow. Sounds decent. Let's understand more of this. Now we can also go ahead and export this handler where we can do all of the stuff. Now, one thing you'll notice that we can actually go ahead and use this async. We get a request, and after the request, you get this object. This object is worth studying, and you can do a lot of stuff. Let me walk you through with that. And since we are in the TypeScript, I don't want too much of the errors to come around, although I will skip some of these errors. It's okay. I'll go ahead and define an interface, TypeScript stuff. I'll call this one as simply submit request so that I can have some data that what kind of data is coming in the request. You don't need to do this. You can use just the JavaScript as well. This is going to be a simple string. And apart from this, what do we have? Email, which is also going to be a string. Fair enough. No big deal. Now, how do we define the handler? All we have to do is this is the data what's coming in. What happens when you receive the data? So we simply go ahead and say this is going to be my handler. Yes, it needs to be named as handler. We'll go ahead and call this one as async. There we go ahead and get a request. It can be of type of any any, there we go. And then comes up is a big object just like this, which will also be of type of any as of now. I know I'm using shortcuts, but that's okay. And that's it. You have defined your handler. This is where the data comes up, and this is you define what happens to the data. You can do all of your validations, all of your work that you do in your controller or your services, whatever you do. This all happens up here. Notice here, they actually gives you that you can use a logger here, but not just logger. We don't use console.log in this motia workbench. We use logger in this one. You can actually use emit in this one, which can be responsible for emitting the events or listening to the event. A lot of stuff it can do. We can also go ahead and use logger, and we can also use the state, that when we receive the data, what the data state is, or if I want to modify the state of existing data, just like this. So these all things are major one, but go ahead and feel free to study more of this. Now inside this, I'll go ahead and open up a try catch block, and catching up the error is actually super easy. Again, I'll use a small hack. Please don't judge me on that, but I'll just go ahead and say this. Now I can go ahead and simply use the logger, and that logger has a lot of options. I'll use the error one, and I'll just go ahead and say error in submission handler. And once I have this, I can actually display the error just like this, and can have the error dot message. Simple enough, straightforward. I hope no big deal there. And not only that, I would love to return this up here. So I'll just go ahead and say status. The status I'm returning is 500, standard enough. And we can return a body as well, if somebody's listening for that. And we'll just go ahead and say error, and we'll call this one as internal server error. I hope the error part is all okay. No big deal there. Super simple. We use logger here instead of console log because Motia has its own interface of displaying the all events and steps and everything. Logger is actually closely binded there. So we go ahead and use this. Super easy. Now let's go ahead and work on with the try part of it. The step one is I would love to see what the data I'm receiving. So I'll just go ahead and say logger.info, just like we do console log, error, console info, all of this. I'll go ahead and say received submission request. And we also would like to see that what the data is coming up. So in this case, what I can do here is I can actually just destructure the entire body of it. So let's just go ahead and say the body that I'm receiving, and you get this into request.body. Standard, very standard. All right. Once I have this, I would love to see that whether the data I'm receiving is actually proper or not. So I'll just go ahead and say const. And there we go. I do expect that you'll send me a channel and you'll send me an email. And I'll go ahead and say that this should be request.body, and that should come up as submit request. Simple TypeScript. And that is it. We will work on it, but let's see what happens when we run this application as it is in between. Let's open up the terminal. And if I go ahead and see npm run dev, what happens in this? So it has created a steps. Notice here it's steps it has created, and we have this workbench available to us. But now I need to hit an endpoint. And what endpoint should I be hitting up? Oh, I have to hit the submit. Pretty standard. Let me fire up my Postman. And we have this already. So notice here I have this body, or should I create the fresh one? I'll create a fresh one for you so that you can also follow. So paste this localhost 3000/submit. And then you need to change this as post. What we are expecting is in the body, you simply go ahead and say we send the raw data. It should not be text. It should be JSON. And simple we will have a channel. Let's just call this one as @chai or code. And we will submit an email, test@test.com, and hit a send. And there we go. We see the internal server error. Let's see what's happening in the Motia itself. And there we go. So at least the submit channel is receiving received submit request, and looks decent to me. I can just check the log as well. Receive the submission request, And I can see the body is here. We, of course, have not completed the whole step, but at least we got the body and channel and all of this. We haven't done anything like, hey, if these are not there, request all of this, but at least we're getting some data. And in here also, we can see that we got the info, submit channel received. Since we haven't finished working on our handler, that's why we received the error, but at least, hey, no result and everything is going on. Now we can continue working on the data that we have. Let's see if we don't receive any of this. So simple if statement, if we don't have the the channel, if we don't have the channel, or if we don't have the email, it should be an and, no, it should be an or. If we don't have the channel or the email, why is it having the issue? Shouldn't be. If we don't have the channel or, my bad, or we don't have the email, then we simply go ahead and simply say return. What do you want to return? I would like to return an object. I think I can copy this. Body status, yes, we can. Copy this and paste it up there. So status is going to be 400, should be good enough. And the body is going to be, this time, missing required fields, which are channel and email. Let's see. Should be good enough. Let's see if I open up the terminal. Oh, don't want a fresh one. This one should be good enough. This one is automatically updated. Let's see. Let's try with the postman. Where are you, postman? If let's just say I cut this out and I don't send it in my request, there we go. We get this error. Nicely, syntax error, expected double quote in properties. Oh, my bad. My formats were bad. No, don't want to save anything. Send this, and there we go. Nicely receiving the error, what we wanted to have up here. And we can see all the logs, that body, what we are receiving. And in the tracing also, we can see what's going on. So nicely, all the tracing, receive, submission, request, all the traces are there, all the logs are there. States we will definitely discuss and work on with this, but fairly good enough. Good stuff. At least a good start, I would say. All right. So this is good. Now how we can validate the stuff. I do have a regex to validate the stuff. You don't need to worry on that, but I'll still actually show you that how you can validate. You can validate it via Zod as well, but maybe you don't want to use Zod. So you can just have an email regex. I actually got it from the regex P. Let me grab it from the notes. Copy that and paste it. So this is a email regex which verify that the email is there. And all we can do is if it is not an email regex which can test for the email, now you'll get it. The Zod is much easier way to do this. Then we can actually return the same stuff. Copy this and there we go. So we can return the status and we can simply check that invalid email format. There we go. Nice and easy. So in this way, you can actually do more of the validation. The validation, if you do through the Zod or through this manual validation, that's all great. Now, the next step is we have to create a job ID so that we can keep a state of what job is currently going on. And we'll call this one as job ID. And this is going to be simply a backtick. Oops, my keyboard has changed. I need to fix this. There we go. So this is the job ID. How do we create a job ID? This is just a UUID or a unique ID to identify that this job has something unique. You can simply do npm install UUID and have a version of it. I can just simply have a job and then followed by underscore of any format that I want. I want to have a date.now, I think, which will make it a unique. But when I was working with this one, I actually created a simple job ID based on this. So feel free to have it whatever you like. I'll just paste this one. So this one is a job ID which has a date.now, mat.random, toString, and substring is deprecated. I should be working on more on that, but you got the point. We just need to create a unique ID with the job. Feel free to have it in your own. Now, next step is we have to await that we have to set some information in this that, hey, some jobs. So this is basically how you queue your or put up a queue in your application. So we'll just use the state for this and we use method for this. If you hit a control state, you can see that we have No much. We'll just use the set. We'll set the job and we'll use just again the backtick for this one. And we'll say the job for which we are going through is going to be like this. All right, this is my job ID. There we go. And what more data? So this is a state we are going. So this job ID will have this much of the data. I hope that's clear. Super easy. By the way, this all is coming up from their own docs. It's not anything that I'm making up. So we have to read the docs of that. But anyways, you just don't need that. We will set up the job ID in this as a data. We will also go ahead and set up the channel in this so that data can pass on. We'll also pass on the email that user has sent us. And we'll also put up a status on this. The value of status is going to be queued. As of now, this is queued. And what also we need is created at, just for our reference. We'll just say new date and we'll just go ahead and say to ISO string. There we go. Whatever the data you want to add it, you can just go ahead and add it. Since this is already an async request, we can just use await wherever we like. And that's it. That's your job ID that you have. And I think this should be indented a little just to make sure that we understand what's going on. Once we are done with this, we have created a job. Let's go ahead and use the logger here. So we'll just say logger.info. There we go. And we'll say job created. And once we have created the job, we want to add more information about the job. So the most important is the job ID that we have. And we'll also say the channel and email, because maybe later on you want to investigate some of the jobs that are not being completed. You should know for what email or for what channel this job was not successfully created. And the most important part after that is we want to emit this. Now, in case you remember, when we were actually creating this, we had this emit logger and state. State is actually that data or a packet of a data which travels between multiple of the steps. And the logger is just for logging. And then we have one more thing, which is emit. Emit is kind of a part of pub/sub model, which helps you to broadcast any information for other steps or particular step. So what are we emitting in this one? This is simply a method which can emit on the object. First of all, we need to provide a topic here. This is the most important part, topic. On what topic you are emitting the information? I am emitting on yt.submit, and make sure this matches up with this one. So this particular step actually emits yt.submit. So make sure you copy this and use this. You can have more, you can emit more of this, but this is what we want here. There we go. So this is the first part. Then when you emit this event, you broadcast this event, what is the data that you are providing to everyone? So this is your data. I am providing you the job ID so that you can pick it up from the job queue. I'll also provide a channel, easy for debugging as well as for more information. And I'll also provide the email. If you have more data, you can just go work with that. Once you are done with this, then simply go ahead and simply say, I want to return. What do you want to return? The status and the body and all of this. So whatever we have written here, just make sure it's a better one, but you just return the same. In this case, the status is 202 or 201, whatever feels good to you or what feels with your standards. 202 is good enough. And in the body itself, we can say that we have a success this time. So success is going to be true. And we don't have error. We can remove this. This one will have a job ID as a body and a message. What message? Your request has been queued. You will get an email soon with improved suggestions for your YouTube videos. Told you, it's super easy to work on with this if I can write videos. There we go. So as you can see, it is not really that hard. This is all just a business logic. The small minor things that we have used here and there are emit, logger, and state, and that's it. That is all it takes. Now let's go ahead and try this again. Where is our postman? There we go. now if I go ahead and give it back, email as well as this, let's send this. And there we go. We received this successfully true. Not only that, we have the job ID and all these things. But if I go back on to motia, this, not this, where is it running? Here it is. Is it here? So there we go. This is our traces. So we have this submit and all the tracing details are here. So we have this set state, which is providing a job, a status, a created at. It should be here. There we go. Nice and easy. So you can see all of this data, and notice here, it actually job is being created, but it also emits a topic, and I can listen for this topic and have the data as a value. Can I expand this? No, not yet. So pretty standard, pretty decent stuff. We can actually use logger as well. And do we have something in the state? Not as of now, but as we go further, I'll walk you through the state as well. So pretty good, pretty decent. I hope there is no confusion in this, and now you can handle any kind of API exchange within the motia. Fair enough, good enough. Now let's move on to the next part of the video where we are going to do the step 2 of this entire application.